Last week, Games Workshop sent me an absolutely massive pile of plastic crack, more Warhammer than I've ever seen in my lifetime.
My precious.
Including 100 sprues of the mental new plastic scenery kit for lovers of the Lord of the Rings with an amazing modular set of Osgiliath ruins. After a fierce fortnight of work, what once began as a series of small ruins has evolved into the beginnings of the single biggest Games Workshop plastic structure on the planet outside of Warhammer World.
We've got a massive 3-tower centerpiece and our dock sector sinking into the Anduin, and yet somehow I have only used half of the plastic the GW sent me. So today we are taking this build to completion as we knock over not only this mental board, but the final sector of the Osgiliath gaming board and the final half of the Siege of Gondor mega board. We have got a lot to do. It's best we get cracking.
So it's time to start putting all our spare plastic crack to work and start finishing off this city. So I grabbed a Sharpie, traced around our current buildings, and then started mocking up a plan for our city layout just into the structural polystyrene layer. But before we build any new buildings, we need to start mounting our 3 massive towers to their foundation. I started with the 3rd tower closest to the river and trimmed down some extruded polystyrene into a thin sheet and cut a nice large flagstone pattern with a sexy little edging and glued down the lower level of that tower with liquid nails. As this foundation actually continues down into the river, I decided this was a great opportunity to help integrate our plastic kits into the foam landscape. So I cut down several of the wall pieces and continued the outer wall down into the water. That's going to look just great with some resin sploshing up against it. I then continued the foam retaining wall to blend the plastic wall tiles into the lower city, carving and texturing them with a pencil and scrunched up alfoil as normal, and I then realized that my grand plan of joining Tower 3 to the lower city had a teeny weeny flaw. Namely, there was a solid wall piece where there needed to be a door for the new gangway. So I smashed that part of the walls apart, cut a new door piece into an archway, and then glued that all back together, ensuring that I left enough room for the floor tiles of the gangway to slot into the 2nd level when it was placed on top. Because of the height difference, I made a little wacky gangway with some stairs from chopped up bits of floor tiles, and now we have our 2 separate building structures completely joined. The floor is lava continues. As this lower city sector is so close to completion, I thought I'd pause my new foundation work to add all the fine detail here and sliced up a whole bunch of foam stripping with the hot wire cutter and glued it down all over those seams in the foam flooring we did in the last video. Nice long strips over the big bits and then short strips on all the exposed joins between the absolute warren of buildings we've created. While those dried, I sliced up a whole bunch of extra floor tiles of all sorts of shapes and sizes to really pad out that sinking and sliding city foundation right down at the water's edge. I glued these down in super wibbly wobbly patterns to convey the treacherous edges of the city floor that hasn't yet tumbled down into the riverbed. With the trim dry, I went back and carved in a whole little row of tiles, widening the grout lines with a pencil, and then heavily weathering the trim and the tiles with a foil ball to impart that rocky texture, as well as really smooshing them and lowering the profile down to the flagstones. And then I realized I want even more damage and kind of deeper regions for pools of resin to sort of pour in the middle of that lower city, so I hacked up a few sections down to the bedrock layer to create some dangerous sinkholes. With the lower level finally complete and ready for paint, it's time to return to our foundation. To finish off the top half of the riverside of the board, I grabbed some Geek Gaming modeling compound and started rolling out that classic flagstone texture to create my ground surface. I've used this technique many times now on the channel, and to be honest, after I rolled all that foam layer down on the lower city below, which was just like so quick and easy, I'd started to doubt whether the effort of rolling out all this modeling compound and then trimming it down with foam and sealing it and grouting it was really worth it. But wait until you see how different both layers look once they are painted. I left room for the foundation of the 3rd tower and then cut and glued that into place, and then as I was going along before each group of compound hadn't fully set, I cut away my edges to leave room for that all important foam edging. If you haven't seen me do this before, welcome! You must be new around here, or perhaps an old hand returning. Smash that like button if you love how this is looking so far. But yeah, essentially this foam edging helps protect the compound, which is super strong when it's used as a molded landform, which is what the product is designed for, but when you roll it out super thin, it can get a little bit of brittle and sort of prone to impacts. I also finished off the retaining walls on the river sides and then carved and textured all the trim once that had dried in place, and then got into the super satisfying grouting phase. Normally I just use this phase to fill in any micro grooves between the layers and bind it all together seamlessly, as of course grout is an excellent adhesive, but there is also another place we regularly see grout. Yes, that's right, it's your mum's shower, or at least that's where I saw it last, and it is amazing for making the lower city even more resin proof to prevent leaks moving through the underlayers to the back of the board, so seams of PVA go down and then sprinklings of grout all over the place, and then cooking it off with isopropyl alcohol and a whole heap of matte scenic sealant. If you're enjoying the build so far, let me know down in the comments your favorite character from Lord of the Rings who'd look awesome in an epic hero diorama, and then like the video and subscribe to go in the draw to win an amazing pack of Osgiliath goodies. If you want to double your chances, you can also join our Patreon down in the description, or just become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button below. Also remember to use our affiliate links whenever you're purchasing any hobbies from Middle-earth to the Horus Heresy and everything in between. We've got affiliates in the US, EU, Australia, New Zealand, and Canada, and any purchase made through the links gets you fantastic prices and sends some dollar eaters back to support the channel. In fact, if you're picking up the new Osgiliath box set from Gap Games here in Brisbane, use this code to get 25% off Games Workshop retail price. All the links down in the description. Now, one of my qualms with this current kit is that it doesn't come with any stairs, although it looks like we'll probably be getting some in the future from Games Workshop. Many savvy people who have received their Osgiliath boxes so far have noticed the ruined frames are labeled A and D. Where are B and C, Games Workshop? And there are some pictures of buildings made from these kits with some juicy extra features like stairs, balustrades, and roofing in the new starter box, so hopefully we're getting some more of these Ray Dranfield masterpieces in the future, but for now, I need some stairs. So I carved up 2 sets, a long single flight to go in our large tower stairwells, and then 2 small single flights to go in the L-shaped stairwells in the lower city. Boy, did that take a while. I really don't want to do that again. Oh no. Oh, don't do it, Lockie. It's silicon time, baby! Now, long-time viewers of the channel will remember the absolute disaster that unfolded the last time I poured silicon for the Siege of Gondor project. Video linked up above if you want to have a good chuckle at my misery, but this time I'm not making any of those mistakes and making nice small molds with good old Pinky Sill. I hot glued the stairs straight down to my table, made a nice secure mold box with foam core, mixed up my silicon, and smashed it in nice and fast. Although I almost forgot how the 6-minute pot life of Pinky Sill is more like 3 minutes in the Brisbane heat, but I got it in quick enough that we were alright, maybe just. I demolded the silicon from the molding box and pried out my mold masters without damaging them too much, which means I can reuse them in the build, and then slapped the molds out in the garage. I threw in some mold release and put in some polyurethane resin, and after 15 minutes she was cured and I demolded our first duplicates. A few bubbles here and there in the mold from me taking too long to get the silicon in, but nothing remotely worrying, especially for a ruined city. I just cleaned them up with snippers and then cast a whole bunch until I had 6 sets for the stairwells in the lower city. I glued them all around the place with liquid nails, as well as one of the stairs in the lower portions of the 3rd tower, and there we have a fully constructed riverbank level, and I am pumped with how it's turned out. Now, I know that we said we were going to build the back of the city today, but because I was about to pour all of the resin for the first 2 riverbank pieces, if you haven't seen that video, it's linked up above, I instead decided to fully finish this piece first, so I grabbed some rattle cans and primed the entire board. Black went down on the water, which I later built up to a graduated luminance profile of black to light grey, and then dark grey went down all over the ruins and stonework. I then brought that to life with a zenithal of light grey to grab all of those raised details. This was actually pretty tricky on this board with the insane amount of pieces hidden under gangways and archways and kind of tricky spots, but I got it all in the end. Now, our paint scheme here actually varies from the normal Osgiliath scheme that long-time viewers will have seen before because of just the staggering amount of detail detail in these pieces from GW plastic, I just had to give everything a nice focused overbrush, which is basically a really aggressive dry brush with a lighter gray, sort of similar to the old Fortress Gray from GW. This lightened the pieces quite a lot and really accented all those sculpted details, but don't worry, that lightness will get knocked back very aggressively with our washes. Before those went down, I just wanted to shout out my amazing Patreons. These incredible people are just a huge part of why any of this madness can happen. A huge congratulations to our winners from the Osgiliath livestream series who scored some of the new battle forces, as well as our winners in the last video. To become part of the family and support the channel and to go in the draw to score some epic Osgiliath giveaways, check out my Patreon linked in the description, or simply hit the join button right here on YouTube just down next to subscribe. I finished off our water texture with the airbrush blue-gray, just like the last two pieces, and then threw down our standard 3 washes. First up was an all-over acrylic black. This was pretty heavy, just to try and knock back that gray, really stain into all the recessed details, especially on the flat surfaces where this acrylic wash kind of pools and dries with lovely weathering tide marks. And then I came in with 2 oil washes, a brown mix of burnt umber and burnt sienna, which I worked into all the recesses of the structures, basically whatever grime is going to naturally accumulate around the base of the walls, all that sort of region. And then a straight lamp black wash, which I just stippled around all over the place and then feathered out onto the building to really build up that weathered stone aesthetic. Then it was time for our rubble layer. So a big old dumping of city rubble and grimdark base ready blended straight down into some fast drying basing glue, all from Geek Gaming. And once again, like the grout layer, this is another important layer as it gives us some extra protection against those resin leaks. Before I did the top levels of the building, I realized I'd actually forgotten something. All of the timber beams exposed by the ruined building. So I grabbed some Citadel Contrast Garagak Sewer, which is my favorite brown in the whole contrast range, and slowly and meticulously picked out every single beam, and it was just so worth it. It's such an awesome detail in these kits, and it really comes up great. Once that was down, a whole load more base ready on top. If you're looking for any of the Geek Gaming products, check out my store, Zorpazorp.com, link down below. And then once it was all dry, I sealed it with isopropyl alcohol and Geek Gaming matte scenic steel and to lock it down tight. And there we have the very first section of the new board completely finished and ready to be covered in liters and liters of epoxy resin. But my goodness, there is just so much left to build. We still have over a third of all of the plastic Crack Games Workshop sent us, so strap in for one last journey as we finally bring this mega build to completion.